Sydney powers on.
Kelly, little too far. Lockett, wonderful control from Lockett as he straight. Sensational play by Tony.
The Bulldogs keep fighting, and they meet next week with top spot on the line.
Should go from there and does.
The Hawks fail narrowly again.
Two successive efforts have gone for nothing, and they've lost their 12th in a row.
The Lions lack roar, and they meet next week with bottom place, the losers' sorry station. And are we on the verge of seeing one of the game's great runs finally come to an end? Knowing Jimmy, we wouldn't bet on it. Thanks for joining us, and it's great to be back with you. Tonight we'll be crossing to the SCG, where Sydney coach Rodney Eade prepares his charges for this week's top-of-the-table clash with the Western Bulldogs. Collingwood is sitting 2-2 after a fluctuating start, and the Magpies square up to Essendon this week in the mighty Anzac Day clash. Nathan Buckley will be in to discuss his side's impressive performance against Richmond and the build-up to the MCG blockbuster. We've got a full book of issues and incidents to discuss, and the Chris Grant Tribunal decision to analyse. I've been missing it too much to delay a moment longer. Allow me to introduce Dermot Brereton, and Dermy Satchin sends his regards.
Oh, very good. How is he?
He's very well, very well.
Striking it well, making millions of dollars as well.
He's earning a rupee. He is earning a rupee.
And I must say, it was wonderful to see the caption when you first bobbed up on screen for the first time this year on Footy Feedback. The caption underneath said, Tim Lane, back from the subcontinent. Not champion sports reporter or anything like, back from the subcontinent.
Did it say that? I didn't see that. I was looking at the camera. Gary, I was looking at you yesterday, and I have to say that as well as you did, it didn't make me terribly happy, but congratulations.
No, being a blue boy, you wouldn't be that impressed, Tim, but we were pretty satisfied with the end result, I've got to say.
Pretty? Just pretty? It was a great win.
Keeping a lid on it. But it came at a price. I suppose that's the thing that tempers it a little bit. David Neat's out for a long period of time. We'll talk about that a little later. And Jimmy Stein's out for, I think he's going to miss training tomorrow night anyway. It's about as far as I'll go just at the minute.
And Rohan Connolly, it was a result you enjoyed very much, a little more than the one at Waverley.
Yeah, well, it took my mind off the nightmare at Waverley, but I've got to say, for a game that was a pretty ordinary spectacle in terms of skill for three quarters, the last quarter certainly made up for it. Fantastic finish.
Well, we've got lots to talk about from round 4 of matches. Let's just have a look at the outcomes of the games, the winners and their margins. And the round began, of course, with Richmond and Collingwood at the MCG, and it was Collingwood turning the tables there. The Bulldogs marched on with their 15-point win down at Cardinia Park, only about their third since the year dot. Sydney, a fantastic win. That really was the performance of the round, I think it's fair to say. The Saints had to come from behind. The Demons, likewise, from the grave halfway through the last quarter. Fremantle, the upset of the round against Essendon. Port Adelaide winning its second of 3 derbies thus far. And North Melbourne against a somewhat rejuvenated Brisbane. Leaving the ladder like that with 2 teams unbeaten and 2 without a win. Plenty in between, but it is starting to take some shape, and the 1-3s, Dermy, just looking a bit shaky, and they include the title holders.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously they don't want to be anywhere near there. Oh, Geelong last year, I thought they were the best team in the comp, and they're 1-3 as well. So really is upended itself on what we perhaps would have expected.
And speaking of Geelong, Gary Ayres perhaps put his head into the lion's jaw in terms of the consequences that face coaches when they speak out about umpires, and he was speaking out about one of his best players, Gary Hocking, one of his most vigorous players, after the match down at Cardinia Park. Let's just have a listen to what the Cat coach had to say.
I think one person tends to get over-umpired, and I know he borders on the line, but I still think some of the ones, if it's a fair and reasonable environment, he doesn't get anything that's fair and reasonable. And
making comment of one incident on the wing
yeah,
here.
It
was ridiculous.
It was totally
against Romero.
Well, it was.
On Romero, yeah.
It was. And what are we talking about? If someone half looks a bit aggressive, that certain people think the game will get out of control. And this is not a reason why we lost, but it just the guy is hard, and to have something like that happen, I just think it goes against what people want in football.
Does that affect his confidence?
I think it does, and I think it affects the way he goes at the ball. And what are we playing?
Yeah.
You know, is it a contest with 18 on 18 out in the paddock, or is it something that because someone shows a little bit of manhood, that they go and penalise it?
Wouldn't you think that'd be less likely to happen when you're playing the Bulldogs, given that they're seen as being a pretty physical team?
Oh, who knows?
Got the big stare there, Rohan.
Yeah, I got the big in-depth answer too, didn't I?
Well, you've got a point. I mean, we'll see the incident in just a moment, and you can't argue with his thinking about that, but in an overall sense, do you think it's a fair point?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think Buddha, more than other players, has probably made a rod for his own back with the way he's played over the years, but it's also true to say that there should never be any preconceptions about any player when an umpire starts umpiring a game.
I think it's money well spent. Gary Ayres is the kind of guy who, the way he played his football, even the way he coaches, very similar to the way he learned his football. The old actions speak louder than words. And for Gary Ayres to come out and say something about a player in a one-off, singular situation, how he is over-umpired, I reckon that carries a lot of weight.
Has he been fined for that, do we know?
Well, we don't know, but
Not
I
yet.
reckon it's probably, if he does get fined, I don't, what's the fine, 2,000 these days?
Yeah, it'd be fairly token. But,
Yeah, but I reckon it's money well spent.
the interesting thing, though, was that he never, I mean, if they want to split hairs about it, he never actually named Gary Hocking.
No, he didn't.
And it was only when Russell Morris actually alluded to the incident with Romero that it became clear that's what he was talking about. And I think at that stage, he might have decided, oh, well, let's get on the soapbox.
We'll hear a little more from the Geelong coach, and you get the impression that this wasn't just, excuse me, an off-the-cuff comment provoked accidentally by a question, because he did stick to the same theme, and here he speaks about soft free kicks.
So many soft free kicks in 50-50 situations, and the silly soft free kicks, and that's the skill in the soft free kicks, and we couldn't sustain the effort for 4 quarters.
So he had it in his mind, I think, when he went in to face the media people.
Absolutely, but you look at it, the guys who tend to get noticed by the umpires in Brownlow votes, and fair to say Hocking gets a lot of votes in the Brownlow, are the guys who get penalised a lot. Jarman gets noticed by the umpires, and one of the most penalised. Well, here we go.
This is the incident, which you've probably seen already, but you could not describe it as anything but trivial.
See a little...
That was it. That was it.
Jose's just punched him in the back a little bit. Most people will still be here waiting. Watch this. Jose.
Oh, I missed it, I've got to say.
Watch Jose's left hand. That's it. And he's just thrown him away with the right arm.
We should also note the umpire was John Harvey.
Which means what, Rohan?
Well, I think, you know, there's plenty of people in footy that have had a bit of problem with John Harvey's abilities as an umpire over the year. Well, I dare say when the cameras are turned off, we might go on this Sunday.
But I mean, this is it. Watch, just watch, and little left arm, just to antagonise him. He runs off, and that's it there. That left hand, that's what the free kick was for. That left hand there just went through it out. That's what the free kick was for.
Well, Tony Shaw made an interesting comment yesterday on AW that this is tending to happen a bit more now across the board. Like there was Romero actually went down and got a free kick for a very soft incident before the start of the game against Collingwood the other week. And, you know, he thinks it's a bit of a slide on the spectacle of the game. I guess I'm inclined to agree with it.
I don't think anyone heard your comment, Gary, but if you said it was a joke, don't say a word.
Sports AFL pick it up.
He spoke, actually. Actually, Gary Ayres saw fit, it seemed, to console Hocking at the end of the quarter and just give him a word of encouragement.
Yeah, he's a good bloke, he's a ripper bloke. He's very much a people's person and very, very hard man, you know, and I just reckon he'd look at that and think, all right, I hated getting the turnover in the ball, but this is a valuable player. I cannot let his mind sway from where the focus should be now. And I reckon he's just probably helped him realign his focus.
The umpires are caught in the middle in a way. I mean, there is the argument that they're not giving enough free kicks. Well, that was the view last year, and they're also being criticised for giving soft frees. We just picked out another that looked a little gentle, although as we looked at it in our videotape room, there was some debate. It involved Damien Hardwick in the match out at Waverley yesterday, as he gets a bit of a shove and finishes up on the seat of his pants. Now, could the umpire do anything but award the free kick there?
I think he's just got to exercise a bit of discretion. I mean, he could quite easily, if you have another look at it there, fall over again, and you could argue that he should have got 50 metres. I mean, this sort of thing happens at every centre bounce, at every throw-in around the ground, and every ball up around the ground, and that's the sort of thing that frustrates players. Make no mistake, that frustrates players more than anything else, to see a free kick go like that. It's hard enough to win the footy, but to see one penalised like that.
Doesn't it, I mean, you look at something like that, doesn't it appear as though they're assuming what's happened without necessarily having seen what's happened?
That was definitely not given by that umpire standing 1 metre away about to bounce it. So therefore you'd have to assume the way they go about their umpiring procedure, the umpire has awarded that 45, 50 metres away. And he's awarded that from side on, you would hope, from 50 metres away, and probably just seen the action at the end.
Well, if it's a firm enough push to put the bloke on the seat of his pants, it should be a free kick.
I reckon he jumped onto the seat of his pants.
I don't argue there, but I think in that instance, and maybe we should start penalising blokes for over-exaggerating, in which I would have been in trouble in years gone by, because I've done it myself. But you know, as I've said before, you can get the umpires in.
Depending on the quality of their acting, no doubt.
Yeah, well, I mean, that becomes a pretty tough call, I know, but I mean, maybe it's got to get to that.
That's where the good thing about umpiring is you do need, and Peter Schwab, I think, has excelled this year. He's got a more human element into the umpires, and the fact now that the umpires are trying to be a little bit more personality-based, Gary, rather than just out of the rule book. You see a bloke fall over like that, there's no free kick there. All you do, instead of going by the rule book, that's A, a free, B, it's not a free. What they should be doing is saying, C, I'll put that in the memory bank that this bloke acts.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And that's the human element coming into it, which I think is better for the umpires, but it wasn't illustrated on that occasion.
What's interesting is that I think almost unanimously people in footy believe that the umpiring this year has been a heap better. You know, I don't think many people would dispute what you're saying. They are showing more flexibility in decision-making. Surprising, though, that, you know, that game drew flack. I think the North Brisbane game, the umpiring drew flack. This round in particular, they've copped it. Now, have we lost our tolerance, or was it just a one-off and they're going to return to the levels they've been at the first 3 rounds? I'm not sure.
Well, just interrupting this discussion, the big news story of this night is the Chris Grant Tribunal hearing. I believe we have an outcome, and we can go now to Brian Waldron at the Tribunal. Brian.
Yes, Tim, in a very big case before the AFL Tribunal tonight. Champion Bulldogs centre-half forward Chris Grant up for striking Lee Colbert, and the news is bad for the Bulldogs. Grant has been suspended for 2 weeks for striking Colbert with an arm to the head. An hour-long case was put before QC Brian Collis, the chairman, who described the incident as a reckless action. Grant said he was trying to knock the ball away from Colbert. Colbert said he felt contact down the front of his body. The umpire said that Grant's eyes were taken off the ball and onto Colbert himself. Very disappointing for Grant. He put forward an emotional plea that he's a ball player, and at no time did he have anything but the ball at his object. He said he actually tried to knock the ball forward, as he did in the first quarter, which resulted in a goal to their full forward Cook. So very disappointing news for the Bulldogs tonight. 2 weeks, we may though hear more of it. I did mention 2 weeks ago that there may have been an appeal from the Tigers. There may well be one from the Bulldogs. They are in discussions at the moment and will consider their verdict, and I do hope to have David Smorgon on later to discuss the issue.
Terrific, Brian. Terrific for all but Western Bulldogs fans, but that's the news story of the night. Chris Grant suspended for 2 weeks and, well, pending an appeal, ineligible for the 2nd year in a row for the Brownlow medal. Oh, that's a controversial one, isn't it? Because, I mean, ball and player were pretty close together. Would you see that there was some doubt that he might be lent the benefit of? Oh, absolutely, for sure. That is a ridiculous outcome. When you see when they come together and with a bit of, I suppose, we'll go a bit of a backtrack. If we can stop this about 1 metre away from impact, from the two head heights, Gary, about the same height, and his arm has started to swing, and the head heights are about the same. And from the arm swinging there, when contact comes, there, look at that, the head heights are the same, the arm has started to swing around now, and you watch, young Lee goes low, the arm doesn't come up, it just comes straight through on the action. Look, he's almost bent at the knees, he bends and buckles at the knees after the ball, and I reckon he is very stiff. I agree. That was going to hit him across the chest to stop him in his run. And look, he had the play of the ball, Colbert, and Grant had turned around to come the other way. He was out of the contest unless he stopped Colbert.
I reckon there is not much football knowledge by the tribunal taken into effect there.
He is a victim of the seduction of the tribunal and all sorts of other sporting bodies by television, I think, by slow motion, by frozen frames, all sorts of things that...
He wouldn't be the first, though, would he?
He wouldn't, and unfortunately he won't be the last, but it's a dangerous thing.
Oh, it got me a lot of times, that one, guys.
But without wanting to dob Chris Grant in, though, I mean, wouldn't you look at that several times as we have now? I mean, his eyes aren't focused on the ball. And that's
they're focused on the man. Look, the thing is, if I'm Chris Grant, I've turned around this way, my goals are there, right? Young Lee's coming this way, pushing the ball that way. The ball gets past me, my man's going to get it. He's obviously thought, stop him. Take him down across the chest with an arm, stop him. Better a free kick than him run on playing.
That wasn't his evidence tonight, though.
That wasn't his evidence. I reckon that's what's gone through his mind, though. And he's just tried to say, well, that won't sound good, focusing on the man. You just got to be so careful, the tribunal. Your advocates, everyone, they say, given the track record, don't ever say the focus was on the man, even if you wanted to take him down in a non-reportable way. Say your focus is on the ball. And I reckon that's the way it's going. I reckon it was the incorrect way. He should have said, I was just trying to take him down to stop him running on. I reckon he's gone for one across the chest to bring him down, a professional free kick. But as we saw, Colbert's knees buckled. You watch this. He's going to goal now, and Lee's about to run through. Had he not stopped Lee Colbert then, he would have been running off with it. And I reckon he's circumstantially very, very unfortunate here.
There's no doubt this is a classic case of one that looks, you know, 3 times as bad on video as it actually did on the day. Because discussing it in the press box, no one seemed to think that he'd have any problems getting off.
You know, the pictures can make it look worse. Now, we've got Brian Waldron back with us, so we can go straight back to him for perhaps an update. Brian, again.
Yes, Tim, and big news here tonight, as we said earlier. Bulldogs champion centre forward Chris Grant has been suspended for 2 weeks by the AFL Tribunal for what Brian Collis termed a reckless action. And we do have news tonight that it will be the first appeals case before the AFL Tribunal on Wednesday evening. And I have the Bulldogs President David Smorgan here with me. And obviously, David, the club has decided to make this big move.
Yes, we made that decision after the hearing tonight, and we'll be lodging the appeal with the AFL by 2 o'clock tomorrow.
And the financial ramifications didn't come into it?
Not an issue.
Okay, well, obviously the Bulldogs feel very strongly about this. David cannot say any more because of legal possibilities that may occur if he does, so thanks very much for your time tonight. That is the news, Tim. Very disappointing for the Bulldogs, but maybe some hope for their supporters following Wednesday night's appeal.
Great work. Thanks for that, Brian Waldron. One thing I reckon the Bulldogs ought to be doing is taking in an expert in television with them. I got a letter last year from a bloke who's been producing and directing television, film and videotape for 30 years, and he said he is really concerned about the way in which he sees the evidence of the videotape being overused. He says eye lines can lie actually on TV, that you set people up at times in interactive situations in TV. You have them actually not looking at each other, but the camera can make it look as though they are looking at each other. This is crucially important to things like this.
Do you think that can be somewhat diluted by the fact that the umpire reported on the spot, though? The fact there wasn't a trial by video case?
Well, it certainly makes it a less controversial case than what happened with him last year when he wasn't reported on the day. I think that's a good point.
And the other thing I would like to bring up, this devil's advocate time, had there been any other player other than Chris Grant, knowing what he'd been through last year, do you think the Bulldogs would be in the appeal process?
Oh, look, there's definitely a situation where the value of a player to a team warrants you going ahead with it. I'd say there's probably, you know, and taking that into account, I'd say there's probably, well, at the Bulldogs at the moment, anywhere from 6 to 10 players that they'd go down this process for.
But just on your point, Tim, though, I mean, isn't that, you know, the tendency to lean far more heavily on the video evidence? That is a legacy of 20 or 30 years of players telling porkies at the tribunal, isn't it? And we know that players are more prepared to tell the truth now and prepared to say they've been hit, but in a way you can understand it.
You've got to use it, but I think you've got to be careful about the way in which you use it. It seems to me, and some of the outcomes would bear this out, that Neil Busy's tribunal ignored all other evidence and went purely on the videotape at times.
Towards the end, I think.
Can I just make a point, though? I mean, this one, I think, is just horribly wrong. Last year, there were people more vocal than me with no vested interest in Chris Grant whatsoever, who thought his suspension last year was horribly wrong. Once you go 12 months down the track, if it's in the book as guilty, weeks received, that's it. Next time you go to the tribunal, you've got a tarnished record for them to look back upon when they're sentencing you. And even the fact when you walk into the tribunal, there we go, that one there, I mean, that was relatively grey, a bit crude in its action, but...
It's not totally dissimilar, is it, really?
Not really. Yeah,
but I mean,
fair call, that one. But, I mean, these build up as sort of very grey areas. And look, we've all played against Chris Grant, and I tell you what, there is 100 players in the league I would prefer to turn my back on before Chris Grant. He is not a dirty player.
He killed me when I played on him, I'll tell you.
Literally or metaphorically?
In my dreams, I think.
Gary raised a point about the fact that the umpire made a report on the spur of the moment. You'd have to think, though, that if that was the case, the umpires are a little confused about what they report on the ground and what they choose to report later, because right on quarter time at Carlton yesterday, this happened. Marcus Seacamp and Brad Pearce. That's where Pearce finished up, didn't play again for a couple of quarters. Chris Mitchell, unobscured eye line, 15 metres away, no report. They both could have been reported. The whiteout actually obscures 2 possible infringements, which will be heard by the tribunal. Incidentally, reports have been laid.
I think Chris Mitchell's comment was it's only a flesh wound, wasn't it? I think he obviously thought there was staging going on. Unfortunately, when he walked 50 metres away and Brad Pearce still hadn't moved on the deck, it was probably clear he wasn't faking.
He chose not to report at the time, Chris Mitchell. Yeah?
Yep, that's
and
correct.
He since reported him on the video,
Yep.
as well. And the boundary umpire and the goal umpire have also reported
So
Seacamp.
that's amazing, because those other officials, several of them ran to Seacamp at quarter time, yet they made no report at the time. So it's almost like
saying to him?
Yeah, it's almost like a safeguard. You either see him, report it, or it's grey and you think, I'll have a look at it later. Why warn a bloke if it wasn't enough for you to wait? That's supposition for them to go to him.
Yeah. I haven't got a great problem with it, by the way. If you know they choose not to report at the time and then do so after, I haven't got a huge problem with that. But it does seem strange that someone's only 10 metres away and doesn't.
Couldn't agree with you more, but why go to the players? I mean, every time an umpire comes to you and you're not reported, that can upset you as a player.
Yeah.
Is it possible that Chris Mitchell could have seen the first blow from Pearce and thought, well, that's tit for tat, bad luck? You know,
Rugby league circumstances.
No way, he wouldn't do that. Well, he'd be umpiring in the bush if he chose to neglect that on the basis of, oh, he gave him one in the good old days, yeah.
It might be anyway.
Rugby league still umpires along those premises. They go with that way.
We might have a look at it again later on, because the timing of the siren against the incident was crucially important, because the siren actually sounded while the flash of white came up on the television. We've studied it closely. Had it been a fraction of a second later, and you wonder when Chris Mitchell heard it, because the end of the quarter occurs in the umpire's mind now. It's when he registers the sound of the siren. But there should have been a free kick, one way or the other. One and then the other.
Marked.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cancelled themselves
And
out.
then when he
And
retaliated,
a shot at goal, and could have changed the result of the game, Gary, but that's another matter. But Melbourne were unlucky because, of course, David Neitz has been badly injured, and after seeing his jaw broken last year, to see this is just horrific for everybody, but Melbourne fans in particular.
Yeah, look, I guess every side would have a bloke that you'd least like to see go down, and make no bones about the fact that he is the one guy in our footy club that I'd least like to see carried off on that stretcher. And so, as I said earlier in the show, that's what makes the win a little bit hollow, and he gets operated on tomorrow, as I understand. He's going to miss, well, the best part of 3 months, if not longer.
And Jimmy's hand transplant is tomorrow, and he'll be right by...
Look, I'd expect him not to train tomorrow night, Tim, but I think there's a couple of issues in this, and I think Neil Danaher's going to have a big say in whether or not Jim Stein's...
He was interesting tonight, wasn't he, Neil Danaher? His comments on one of the networks was, he's broken his hand, mate. It'd be pretty hard for him to come up.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right.
You're saying he's going to take a tougher line than previous coaches on the great run?
Well, I said to Rohan, also mentioned that Danny Corcoran suggested he may not play as well, but the thing about both those fellows, they've only played or coached or been involved with Jimmy for 4 weeks. Now, he's got over some pretty amazing things in years gone by. So, look, I would imagine that they'll give him a fair bit of rope, but he won't take any risks.
Well, they were talking about putting it in a splint, I think. But I mean, there's some. I know Danny Corcoran was talking about some sort of risk of infection, and I think at the most he'd miss 2 anyway. So surely the long term. I mean, it's a fantastic record, but you don't want to jeopardise his long-term.
I think it'll be pretty cut and dried at the end of the day. Either you can or you can't, and I think they'll make the decision pretty quickly.
Let's consult the expert, Melbourne's doctor, Dr. Andrew Daff. Jamie Aldridge caught up with him today.
Jim just has a fracture in his hand, and he's seen a specialist, and it's been deemed the best thing for his hand at this stage is just to have a small procedure done, just to try to hold the fracture together.
How confident are you guys that you're going to be able to get over the problem, and how confident is Jim that he's going to be right to play this weekend, and what are the chances? What type of percentages are we talking about?
I don't think it's very difficult to put percentages. It's just we've got to just see, and we've just got to see how the operation goes, and how easy it is to deal with the situation, and really so we can't make any great statements about next weekend or thereafter until we just get some feedback from that.
Dr. Andrew Daff today, Jimmy Stynes and David Neitz. Neitz out for a long stretch, and Stynes, we'll wait and see. He's been playing for a long stretch. Rohan, other injury news?
Well, it was a relatively injury-free weekend, I think, apart from your club there. But one which came to light today, Glenn Freeborn turned his ankle in the first 30 seconds of the seconds game at Windy Hill on Saturday. Had a scan on that today, and it's shown a slight fracture and damaged ligaments. So he's going to miss at least the next 4 and possibly up to 6. So premiership player, handy goal kicker, you know, guy they probably wouldn't want to lose. And they've already got, of course, King out and Mark Roberts for 3 weeks with a hamstring strain as well.
Oh, and I forgot, more terrible news for Melbourne. One of their veteran forwards, Gary Lyon, at the end of yesterday's match looked to be in a very serious condition.
That's called the earlier signs of chronic fatigue syndrome, and
I have to say, Gaz, watching the replay last night, when you put on that tackle, my wife almost ran out of the room in fright. She thought you looked absolutely feral.
Oh,
is that right?
Love an ice pack.
Yeah, Stern, that's the old get out of Tuesday, Thursday training ice pack that you tend to slap on. But this is great vision, actually. I'm pretty happy to see
How those
it.
bananas go down?
Nah, look, I was a bit weary, but it always helps when you win, Rohan. You'd know that, being a great player with
That is age and leaden legs. Let's contrast it with youth and run in the legs. Scott Chism kicking a great running goal for the Dockers at Waverley yesterday.
They can rebound it here, Chism. Hearts in the mouth stuff for Fremantle Dockers supporters here. He runs to 50.
If it's a goal.
It's carried. Well, he can be absolutely brilliant, or he can really get...
There are 3 sure things in life: death, taxes and the end of the analogue mobile phone network. If your mobile telephone number starts with 014, 015, 017, 018 or 019, then the end is near. The analogue mobile phone network closes on January 1 in the year 2000 in all but some rural areas. But for a limited time, Harvey Norman are doing red-hot deals on digital phones. Time's ticking away, so don't delay. See Harvey Norman today. Red-hot analogue to digital deals available at these locations.
Another season, another 185 games.
Speaking of sensational.
And the only place you'll see every game is Sports AFL.
We'll bring you live and exclusive coverage like you've never seen it before.
Oh, what a grab!
With analysis, camera angles and commentary that credits you, the fan, with some knowledge of this great game.
Oh, great leap. Is that a mark? It's been paid. Every Sunday night, there's Weekend Wrap with detailed match reports and highlights of Sunday games.
Monday nights, join Dermy, Tim Lane, Rohan Connolly and Gary Lyon for football feedback.
The eminent Football Review Show.
Then, Thursday nights, join Barras, Pete, Billy, Harves and Colo for Footy Focus, with a first look at team lineups and a detailed preview of the weekend's games.
Live footy, breathe footy. Sports AFL, 24 hours a day.
Superstars of Wrestling, tonight, 8:30 on Sports Australia, Channel 12.
Collingwood champ Nathan Buckley gets his run in this week with one of his customary running bombs, one of his 40-odd possessions.
Not to be outdone, the great Schwatter, about the 5th of this kind from his boot this year.
53 metres out. The left foot of Wayne Schwartz has gone long. It's there. 4 goals, Wayne Schwartz. He's pumped.
And this was a fair catch from Nathan Chapman.
Free kick.
Just about was, but
Yes.
all the way.
And this wasn't bad from young McDonald, known around the club as Junior. A pretty important time too.
And let's hope tackles like this never get umpired out of the game. Bang! Good on that classic stuff from Gary Hocking.
Backing back, taking the grab is Riccardi.
They hurt.
Michael Sexton wasn't sure which way he was going after this clash with young Russell Robinson. Pushed into it there by Dean Rice, I might add.
And young first-year player Simon Black finishes off this week. He's shown a bit in his first few weeks in his first season, hasn't he? And go back and get it, son.
Still with Black. Puts on the gas. And kicks one.
There you go. Well done.
Just before we go to our first guest, repeating the news for anyone joining us late, that Chris Grant has been suspended for 2 weeks, and Bulldog President David Smorgan has announced that there will be, for the first time, an appeal lodged by the club against the Tribunal's verdict. Well, Sydney journeyed to the WACA last Saturday night in good form, but generally expected to find the home side a little too tough. Instead, the Swans emerged triumphant and thoroughly impressive. Rodney Eade joins us from the SCG. Rocket, thanks for being with us. And when we spoke to you on radio yesterday, you put a very big rap on the performance by the Swans in terms of where you rated it in the time you've been there.
Yeah, I think Jim, for 2 reasons, was the quality of the opposition. So I'm getting feedback here. It's getting the double feedback, and also just the road trip. You know, it's a 5-hour trip for us, and you know that I just think was just a good quality win.
How's that sound? Bob Hawke had it once in a TV interview, and everyone thought he'd been on the bottle. Is that any better?
Yes, I think I might sound the same. I'm just getting echo of my voice, so it's certainly a bit disconcerting.
Well, hearing it once is a worry, but hearing it...
Rocket, you're coming through loud and clear and perfect this end, so just carry the ball and run with it, mate. Over the last few weeks, apart from Plugger Lockett turning good this weekend, really your team has been made up of, say, several very good players, so-called champions, and the rest have been sort of lesser lights, but, gee, they've just kept winning the ball.
Yeah, I think that's the pleasing thing, that perhaps the media in Melbourne early in the year was saying life after Roos and Lockett, it's going to be very poor for the Swans, and but I think the pleasing thing has been the consistency of the team, and also the fact we haven't relied on 1 or 2 players for the 4 games so far. We've had an input from every player, and I think it's been pleasing that a lot of the younger players have stood up, and no, we've still got about 3 or 4 good players to come back, so that's sort of looking good for the future.
I just get the feeling with the likes of, say, someone like a Nix, that you're trying to get players into almost like a sheedy mould that you can throw them anywhere on the ground at any stage, and they'll be very comfortable with that.
Yes, that's for sure, Dermot. I think really if you lock yourself into 1 or 2 spots and you don't play well, you're really headed for the bench. And I think really for the flexibility of the team, it's good for players to play in different spots. And as far as Matthew Nix is concerned, he played 5 games in '96 and played 18 last year, and we thought he played very well. And his pre-season form was excellent, and I think he's certainly another midfield option. We want to play him further up the ground than rather than a back pocket.
And Rocket, you quietly introduced another of the great veterans you got there in Mark Bayes on the weekend. He slipped on for perhaps just a half. How's his preparation been, and what role do you see him playing?
Yeah, his pre-season has been very slow for us, which has been on purpose, because it's certainly a long, hard year, and Mark's been through quite a few injuries over the last 2 years. He played the first game of the year in the reserve, so he's ended up with now two 2 3/4 games. His form last week was very good in the reserve, so I think the fact we hold him in such high regard that we just eased him in off the bench. He didn't do much, obviously, on Saturday night, but I think it'll be certainly good for the run. I think he's just, he certainly can play down back, as he's proved, but I think he's really a forward player now, maybe a pinch hitter off the bench, but he's one player that can win a game, and I think match winners don't grow on trees, so hopefully Mark can run into a bit of form.
Wayne Schwartz, Rocket, obviously he's been probably the recruit of the year to date. Did you count on him kicking so many goals? Well, I mean, was that a key factor in why you got him up there, to kick goals as well as give you that drive out of the middle?
No, that's been a bonus so far. Obviously with Tony's injury last year, that we want to share the goals around a bit more, and I think that was a positive of Tony being down with injuries and also out a bit last year, that a lot of players stood up and got a lot of confidence. You know, the Lewis and O'Loughlin's and Moonies and these type of players kicked a lot of goals last year, and certainly Swass was really aimed at just bolstering our midfield, but the fact him kicking goals has been a real bonus.
How many can he kick? I mean, he's playing on a relatively small ground. How many could he kick for the year?
I said at the start of the year that I'd like Kelly to kick 40, like O'Loughlin to kick 40, and if Swass and Crusoe could get 20 to 25, I'd be very happy. Now, obviously, Wayne's on target to better that, but I think that'll change from week to week. I mean, I don't think Wayne's going to kick 5 every week.
Have you sensed in him some sort of regeneration process with the change of club? Because he's never played better.
Well, he's won 2 best and fairest at North Melbourne, so obviously that he's had very good years those years, and I think one might have been a premiership year, I'm not too sure. But I think a regeneration is probably too harsh a term, but it's certainly been invigorating for him. I think change of clubs. You know, he's been at one club for 13 to 14 years if you count the under-19s, and he's had a couple of injuries over the last couple of seasons, and I think just a change of life and a change of cities has certainly helped him. And he's attacked pre-season very well. He said that it's his fittest he's ever been, and I think the form's showing at the moment.
Rodney, you would have seen him very closely when you spent time at North Melbourne. And the fact that you've seen his game before, teams are obviously going to sit on him now. You just cannot let a free-running midfielder kick 5 goals each week. What do you do when teams start to really sweat on him and basically straight-out tag him?
Well, Paul Kelly gets that every week. I certainly think Wayne Swass is a good enough player. Nathan Buckley gets it every week. Robert Harvey gets it every week. At the moment, Wayne's changing up forward. He kicked 2 or 3 of his goals up forward. He just wasn't a midfielder, and he can play half back. He can play on the wing. So I'm not really overly concerned by that. I think Wayne's a good enough player to cope with that.
And it must have put a smile on your face, Rocket, to see Big Plugger slot through. I think it was 7 lazy ones on the Friday night.
Yes, I think a bit like the Mark Twain. I think the reports of him going downhill are a bit premature, and 2 of his first 3 games were quite pleasing. He kicked 4 the first week, gave 3 away, had 2 taken off him, struggled against Brisbane, and played very well last week against Geelong, kicked 3-6. If he kicked straight like he did the weekend, kicked 7 or 8, nobody would be saying anything. But he certainly played well. And I think the thing you could tell was the work he's done over the pre-season, how fit he's got himself, and he's kicked 3 or 4 goals on the run from snaps, and I certainly was pleased with his form.
So there were suggestions that perhaps the reflexes might have been on the wane. You've never been concerned at that?
No, I think like anybody, but especially when you get 30 plus, that you need continuous games. We took a deliberate approach with most players, which could have backfired first game, of not giving them a lot of football in the pre-season as far as full games. They'd played 2 or 3 quarters at a time, and I think Tony didn't benefit from that. I think he needs to play continuous footy, and therefore his reflexes get a bit better. And I think that started to show last week against Geelong when he started to catch the footy well, and he certainly caught some good ones on Saturday night.
Rocket, you actually said you were pretty happy with Plugger when he went onto the ball earlier in the year, and I think he only had 1 to his credit. Seems to be getting a bit of a habit. You're not getting many things wrong. And on the weekend you left young Wharf on Gehrig, who was doing a bit of damage. What's your principle behind that? Well, how do you see Wharf shaping up?
Yes, we've got a lot of time for Rohan. He's 6'2" athlete who can really run. I just thought that Fraser Gehrig is so hard to match up at 6'4", extremely fast as Peter Matera, and now has built himself up to be a very strong man. I mean, there's not many players can match him in every department. And he kicked 3 the first quarter. 1 was via that 50, but I just said to him at quarter time that we had confidence in him. I thought his persistence was very good. He started to run off him, and he was taking Fraser Gehrig further up the ground. And at times, Fraser Gehrig did look a bit tired. So that we decided to stick with him. Obviously got beaten in the air 3 or 4, 5 or 6 times. But we decided to stick with him. I thought the last quarter Rohan persisted and he ran off 2 or 3 times, which really set us up. So I think the character of Rohan at the weekend was great.
Did you bollock him over the 50, which happened right on quarter time and produced a goal, or not?
No, not at all. That happened just in front of me because I'd come down from the bird's nest right up the top there. It's the coach's box. But no, I thought he was a bit stiff, and that was Gehrig's 3rd goal, and I thought maybe Rohan's on the precipice of sort of losing his confidence, and I don't think there was anything gained by sort of berating for that. So I just said to him at quarter time, we'll stick with you. I think your persistence was good. Just keep working at it. And I was certainly pleased with him at the end of the night.
Is that the strength of your coaching, or one of the strengths of your coaching, Rocket, that you're able to have a great affinity with the players and build confidence rather than the book of yesteryear was berate players and get them to try harder? You actually like to instil the confidence?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, Dermot. Last year I probably got into the state a few times of giving them a few pays. I really think you just got to. I think you got to coach to your personality. I know when I first started coaching, I wanted to be like David Parker and Alan Jeans and John Kennedy, and sort of try to remember what they'd say at certain instances. And I found out it wasn't me. And I think you just got to coach to your personality, and that's my personality, is to talk to people and maybe have a joke at times and sort of get their confidence up. So whether that's the right or the wrong way, I'm not too sure.
You just save the sprays for the journos, don't you, Rocket?
Just for people like you, Rohan, we give the excellent theme song.
Yeah, thank you. Now, big game this week. Apart from the fact that it's two undefeated sides, there's a bit of added spice, I suppose, given the Wibber-Kelly war of 1997. How are you approaching that this time around?
Well, I think that supposed war between Paul and Tony was really, I think, out the window the second time we played them. That happened second game of the year, and then we played them up here mid-season. I think that sort of got all the bad water out of the way. And on the final, there was no antagonism, I don't think. And the fact that Footscray walloped us that day, I think proved there was no antagonism. I think this weekend, if there is any bad blood, it won't be from us. It's really two teams that are playing well at the moment at the top of the ladder, and there's 4 points at stake.
Do you think the umpires might go looking for it though? I mean, I remember back to the final last year, and I think it was Darren Goldsmith actually having words with Paul Kelly before the start of the game.
I'm not too sure. I wouldn't think they would, but you have to ask Peter Swab, I suppose.
Rocket, I know you like a challenge. At this point in time, are you more comfortable that Chris Grant is out, or would you prefer the challenge of him being in?
I think there's 50-50. For the sake of 4 points, you'd obviously rather him out. I mean, that's a silly statement to rather him play. But I think in the context of the things, I mean, if you happen to beat the Western Bulldogs, you'd certainly rather him playing. And the fact that we're obviously going to play them once more in Melbourne and maybe in the finals, you'd probably like to try a few different things that might have to encounter him later on. But I mean, that's just the way it goes.
Rod, your fade out last year was almost as dramatic and unexpected as your rise to the grand final in 1996. Were you concerned at the end of last season that perhaps the magic had been lost?
No, not at all, Tim. I mean, you look for reasons, not excuses, and we sort of analysed at the end of the season and set about rectifying what we thought was wrong rather than labour on the point. And that we attacked pre-season with clear goals and clear aims, and I suppose clear objectives, what we wanted to achieve. And the players really have been enthusiastic. They've trained very hard, and I think at the moment the confidence is high. What was it, do you think, that caused that the bottom to fall out last year? I think our lack of pre-season caught up with us. Everyone said that fade out against St Kilda was a turning point, but it's probably the next week. We beat Hawthorn by 50-odd points, but we got 6 injuries out of the game, which 2 or 3 didn't play the next week. We still took 3 into the Carlton game, and it just caught up with us. And by the time and the next week against Geelong too, I think we just had tired bodies, consequently tired minds through lack of experience, lack of maturity, and our skills dropped away. And that's certainly the area that we had to work on, was our mental toughness and our skill area, and hopefully those things have been rectified.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Good luck this week. It should be a beauty. The first real blockbuster, the 2 unbeaten teams slugging it out at the SCG. Great one for the Sydney crowd, no doubt, an easy one to sell.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
On your Rocket.
Rod Eade, coach of Sydney, joining us live from the SCG. A tremendous win. He said it's as good a win as they've had since he's been at the club. He put it up alongside the 1-point preliminary final win over Essendon that catapulted the Swans into the 1996 grand final. And they bellowed out that club song very loud at the WACA ground on Saturday night. And in their midst was Derek Kickett, who always carried a kilo too in his playing days, but just at the minute looks as though he might have another 1 or 2 to spare.
Beautiful.
Take down the thunder from the sky, whether the odds they great or they small, but we'll go in and win overall. For our loyal sons are marching onwards to victory.
On Sports AFL, you can see your team's games replayed at a time to suit you. Every week, every game replayed at the same time. The Magpie Show, 9 tonight on Sports AFL. Known as the Marrickville Mauler, Jeff Fenech shot to stardom when he won the IBF World Bantamweight title, defeating Japan's Satoshi Shinyaki. Overnight, Jeff had become an Australian sporting hero, and the fights kept coming, with Jeff exciting his home crowd with some fearsome fistic displays. And then the fight he regards as his greatest, a TKO win over Victor Courageous to win the WBC World Featherweight crown in July 1988.
That was a marvellous performance by Jeff Fenech.
The I Love Yous All pugilist was now a legend and ready for his ultimate foe, Azuma Nelson. However, their first fight was in Fenech's mind like his Olympic experience. He was wrong. There would be no more world crowns for the Marrickville Mauler, but now he's one of our champions, commentating and co-hosting Fight Night on the Channel of Champions, Sports Australia. You thought Sports Australia 2 was kicking in April? Well, get a load of May. AFL, pay TV exclusive live games, Sydney, Brisbane only. Soccer, pay TV exclusive live coverage of the Ericsson Cup Final Series. Basketball, the Women's World Championships in a pay TV exclusive. Rugby, pay TV exclusive live coverage of the 98 Rugby Premiership. If it moves in May, you'll see it on Channel 14, Sports Australia 2.
Every Friday night is Netball Night on Sports Australia. Catch Australia's best in 8 new-look teams shooting for the Commonwealth Bank Trophy. The action is hot with sensational live netball every Friday night on Sports Australia Channel 12, your netball network.
Welcome back. Nathan Buckley in just a moment, but first the big news of the night. Chris Grant, who missed the Brownlow medal last year because of a suspension, has been suspended again over that incident with Lee Colbert at Cardinia Park on Saturday. He's been suspended for 2 weeks, and Footscray's chairman David Smorgon has announced immediately that the Western Bulldogs will lodge the first appeal in the history of the new system. And Dermy doesn't agree with Brian Collis and his panel.
I just think they've shown no football knowledge for the game whatsoever there.
And Nathan Buckley raised a very interesting point, Tim. Can the sentence increase on appeal, Derm? You'd know more than better.
I have been to one of the old formulated appeals, and I was told when we went in there for the Chris McDermott so-called bump, yep, I could get more. But I don't know in the new system.
And don't tell me you were innocent.
You hit the nail. Just like when I clocked you.
Well, let's move on. And they're knocking on the door of the 8. They've just humbled one traditional rival, and another awaits this week. If the Maggies overcome Essendon on Saturday, look out, the rush for the bandwagon will be on. And Nathan Buckley joins us in the studio. Thanks for being with us, Nathan.
How are you, Bucks?
I suppose everyone wants to know whether you can bottle a formula that seemed to come together on Friday night. That's what Collingwood fans have been waiting for.
Yeah, certainly hope so. The first half was very good and probably played to our sort of maximum potential, which is what every side would love to do every game, I suppose. And we faded out a little in the second half, but it's going to be whether we can reproduce that sort of form that we know we can produce regularly over the season, which will decide how well we'll go.
Enjoy playing on the ball again, because you were left to a stationary position last week against the Bulldogs, and really, for your standards, didn't get it a great deal, Nathan.
Yeah, the shocker, mate. So it was good to make up for that. But I think last week, I mean, I've basically given open slather to move anywhere sort of around the midfield area. I wasn't doing real well there, so I tried to push myself into the forward line a little, which the ball wasn't coming down too frequently or at all well when it was. So that probably wasn't the best move, but just had a bad one.
Don't like a stationary position, because I tend to think the way you play, if you can play a stationary position, Collingwood would be so much better off, because at the moment you gun it when you're in the middle of the ground, and occasionally we get the right matchup. You can do something like against Essendon late in the year last year, but just doesn't appeal to you?
Yeah, it does. I think there's not many stationary positions left in the game these days, so if I was to go forward, it would probably be a roaming forward type role, unless I was given the forward 50, I suppose, which I've enjoyed occasionally. But I think Shorey prefers me as a bit of a midfield back rather than a forward.
Just before you...
Yes, Dan, keep going, mate, keep going.
Tony Shorey, you touched on that then. Was there any animosity during the week between you and Shorey as to where you would play?
No, there never has been. I've always made it clear that, I mean, my preference is to play in the centre, but...
made it clear your preference is to play in the centre?
My preference, I mean, Shorey knows that, and we joke about that all the time, but I'll play wherever he sees fit that my sort of expertise is used for the Collingwood Footy Club.
It sounds a little bit like Gary Alan Jones used to say to him at training. He used to get a stick and mark a circle out on the ground under the lights at training, and said, just facetiously, he'd always say to me, now don't go outside your circle, Dammy, otherwise the people watching here at training won't see you, son.
Well, I thought it was a very diplomatic answer, Nathan. Now, I'm slightly bemused, I've got to say, with the infatuation that the football public has with the Rocker boys. Now, they've come out obviously pretty juiced up, and Sav's got the shirt off and flexed the muscles, but how much work goes into these boys mentally before a game? I mean, was there a special focus for them to come out and perhaps display a little bit more overt aggression, or is that just something that they took on themselves?
No, I think if there was any special focus, it was on the whole team, basically, about being a little bit more intense than we were the previous week. When our intensity level is high, we can be a very good side. And I think with the standard of the evenness of the competition these days, if you drop off a couple of percent, you virtually get flogged. And I suppose Richmond would play on a bit of intensity, and we were able to match and overcome that early in the game, and that was probably where we won the game.
Do you think these boys pay the price for having such, I describe it as prodigious talent that perhaps they don't display enough, but I mean, they do tend to make hard things look very easy? Do you think they pay the price for that a bit?
Yeah, well, there's not many blokes as big as Sav that sort of move around as well as he, or as agile as he is, sort of inside the forward 50. For that reason, you wonder sometimes why doesn't he hold his grabs, and he's much maligned for not knocking a bloke over when he's on the hard lead in front of him.
But you've got to remember too, Bucks, that 50-metre line, not so much for you, for blokes like you and me, Gary, the 50-metre line, or when I used to have a kick occasionally, that's an area which defines you're a chance and not a real chance. That line for both Rockers is 60, 65 metres, isn't it? Yeah.
Now, here's why the infatuation, Gary. 96 to 98, Collingwood have won 17 of the 18 games in which they've kicked over 100 points out of 48 games that they've played. Now, if we go to the Rockers themselves, 96, Sav Rocker, we shall see in just a moment. 40 goals when Collingwood have won, and 26 when they've lost, 4.4 when they've won, 2 when they've lost, and the figures go on in a similar pattern for Anthony. So I wonder which is the chicken and which is the egg, Nathan.
That's the question.
Do they spark the team, or does the team spark them?
I've got a feeling it's a bit of both, but no doubt we need them to be catching the ball when it gets down there. But I think it showed on Friday night that when the ball's coming down often, and we managed to get a bit of space through the midfield, simply because we were running fairly hard through the back line and covered the lines, that we had a few blokes that were actually clear and had a couple of seconds to assess the options. And I think the ball was a lot cleaner coming into our forward line this week, which enabled them to kick goals.
It's definitely got a little bit to do with delivery, but also the fact that, say, when they only are kicking 2 goals between them, as opposed to when they're, say, kicking 6 or more between them, the ball's still getting inside the 50 the same amount of times, but it's just going ping back out the back door because they don't hold it in. So there is a little bit in both of those things, and obviously the delivery helps them hold it in there, hold their grabs.
No doubt.
I think
the half forwards movement is very important. If we start struggling for clean flowing ball into the forward line, I think the half forward line seems to sort of push back a little bit, 10, 15 metres, to think, well, I'll get on the end of a 35, 40 metre pass here, because it's just sort of stuttering down the field. If it's flowing down, I think you find the half forwards lead into the ball a bit more, which provides a lot more space for Sav to move into for one, and Anthony to have that area on his own to have a one-on-one marking duel, which is when he's best.
Just wondering if the brotherly chemistry was sort of had the Bunsen burner put under it in a way on Friday night when they were roughed up. They seemed to come together, and it almost seemed to inspire.
I used to try and get Sav to practice, and I just reckon I'm a big believer in practice using your voice and just mucking around at training. I used to try and practice him to shout into my face, because like when Bullis grabbed me, it would have been great for him personally to grab Bullis back and just scream into his face, "I'll tear your head off if you want to try this stuff." And I tell you what, even if you know he was not going to do that, which you can't out in the ground, it's a terrifying man. He's 6'5" and 110 kilograms.
And you've taught him to say much worse things.
Yeah, well, so to speak.
He does need someone sort of around him to do that. In the year that you were there, Derm, he was very much more aggressive than in either the years before or after. We need him to be able to produce that sort of aggression himself.
He's got to grow up though, but I've just got to ask you about that year too. 95, Anzac Day, how many times have you thought, maybe I should have had a ping in the dying seconds
I've been asked about it a few times, but yeah, no, I would have kicked in the Kranzberg, who was only 5 or 6 metres in front of me, unfortunately.
What an occasion it's become, and bearing in mind that Collingwood hasn't had the most successful run in its history, but how much do you look forward to it?
Oh, they're great matches. They're toss of the coin games. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, whatever the form of the two sides leading into it, it's usually not an indication of how the game's going to go. So, I mean, it's a game, obviously, that both Collingwood and Essendon look forward to, and other clubs are looking forward to try and pinch.
Is it set in stone Essendon and Collingwood play every Anzac Day?
Just about.
I think they should, mate.
That's wrong.
Kidding, are you?
Why?
That is out and out
tradition
wrong.
now, mate.
Well, it should be shared around. I mean, I'd love to play on Anzac Day too.
They were the two teams that put it up to the AFL.
The Diggers?
I know what you're digging, and it's not football. They were the teams who put it up as a proposal to the AFL.
Right, okay.
And they said, basically...
So they own it forever and ever.
Yeah, Sheeds fired it up. They said, along with Carlton, they're the 3 biggest crowd-pulling teams in Victoria, and you can be assured that it's going to be... It's like the grand final. You've got to buy your seats from a booking agency.
I've got no argument. I think it's a fantastic
I don't think it'd do that with Melbourne.
How would Joe Gutnick feel about applying for Good Friday?
Oh, you're into dangerous territory there. I'm touching that one. I've got no idea.
Just talking about the Collingwood forwards at the other end of the ground, Matthew Lloyd faced this season with great expectations on his shoulders. Started very well, had a night out against Hawthorn in the Ansett Cup, but his last 9 shots at goal have missed. It looks as though he's lost the compass.
Well, there's one thing about that, Tim, and he's still getting the footy and he's still having shots on goal, and as sure as the sun rises tomorrow, it'll turn for this bloke and you'll get back on target.
Hardest thing, Gaz, and Bucks can all say, is getting the ball.
Exactly right. I wouldn't be too concerned. I mean, and you would imagine, Nathan, that on Anzac Day, when only you two teams will be running around, that he will kick goals again, and Matthew Lloyd.
Yeah, well, he'll obviously have his fair share of chances, but I'm looking forward to a possible matchup. Not preempting sure at all, but I think Mal Michael's been a great player for us over the last couple of weeks, and has sort of added a bit of grit to the back line. I think I'd love to see that matchup, because Mal, I think, is ready to take the step up against the gun forwards of the competition.
I think Mal might struggle against smart foot. I wouldn't play Mal Michael on Jason Dunstall, even though Dunstall was out and they were talking about Mal Michael was the man perhaps to match him up. He's still got to learn a bit about footy. The smart forwards are going to run him under the ball, but he's a great athlete, and against great forward athletes, I reckon he's tailor-made at the moment.
He's athletic, but I think a few of the things we've seen him do over the last couple of weeks, he is a pretty smart backman with his positioning, which is probably
growing up quick.
A very important part of playing in the back line. So we're looking forward to him continuing his form.
And let's hope he doesn't fall asleep like the Essendon defence in an amazing incident right on quarter time at Waverley yesterday. McManus from, what, 70 metres out, that went through for a goal.
You're kidding.
The Bomber defence just stopped. Wellman chased it and couldn't get there.
Reminiscent of one that I can remember, I think it was an Essendon Collingwood match, and David, was it Flood? What's Flood? David Flood had a shot from about 55, and it was a floater and bounced about 5 metres out from goal, and there was a pack there, but somehow got through to go. The coach just would absolutely be hating that.
I'd love to just hear the siren go in that situation there. When did he realise Sean Wellman that the siren gone? Did he have time, in fact, to...
Before the ball got to him and past him, yeah.
Oh, gee, I don't think Kevin would be very happy
Oh, no. Oh, there a lot of spanky in the quarter-time group there, I think.
Actually, they seemed to struggle all day back there, Essendon. They had ample opportunity here, time and again, to get rid of the ball out of the back half. This is later in the game, and the wear and tear was shown.
Here's Smoking Joe. Oh, so that's a good indication there. One boy goes to ground, put the body in, the other uses the slipper. So one's taking a bodily risk, and that's this boy.
Yeah, that just simply is very courageous young
player. He ran into Horsfold the other week, didn't he? He has a dip, which that's a good indication. He's willing to fight that hard, you keep it in.
Look at their midfield against Fremantle. 9 to 16, 14 to 29, 25-5, 21-5, 25. Doesn't read too well.
Just tells the tale on Waverley, particularly where there's so much space to run into. If your midfield players are struggling like that, then very rarely will you win.
It's cut down though a bit, Waverley. The boundaries have been brought in a little bit on the ends. It's still wide in the middle. You can still get lost on those wings, but tell you what, the amazing stat there, Sean.
Is that an area you'd hope to exploit, Nathan?
Oh, I don't think it's a major factor for us whether we're going to get them in the forwards, backs or midfields. I think it's an overall intensity issue for us, and if we can, I didn't sense any particular concern that we had either Rowdy or Willow out on during the week last week, because I think we knew, regardless of the personnel, there just needed to be a bit of a change in attitude and a lift in intensity, and I think the team realised that if that was what was going to win the game, win or lose it, rather than personnel, and I think that's going to be the standard for us over the season.
Just quickly, Monkhurst being allowed to run as much as he could on the ball without coming off at the 15-minute mark of each quarter. You could see in his own mind, he was saying, this is great.
Yeah, Monk loved Friday night. I think he was loving the opportunity to have that time, exactly, but had to have that time to get himself into the game and to put his own mark on it, and he did very well and enjoyed the contest against Bendigo.
We better let you get away, because I know many of your teammates are down at the MCG building a moat around the outside of the stadium to keep Gary Lyon and the marauding demons from getting in there for Anzac Day.
Of course, mate.
Thanks for joining us, Nathan, and have a good one on Saturday. It should be another great day. We take a break, and as we go to it, we have a little replay from the South Australian Derby, which was staged yesterday, won by the 2-year-old Port Power.
Socket off the ground for Choney. We're down to 2 seconds. Wait for the siren. There it is. Oh, don't they love it? Don't they love it? What a great performance.
And that's what Debatable is all about, isn't it, Graham?
There are 3 sure things in life: death, taxes and the end of the analogue mobile phone network. If your mobile telephone number starts with 014, 015, 017, 018 or 019, then the end is near. The analogue mobile phone network closes on January 1 in the year 2000 in all but some rural areas. But for a limited time, Harvey Norman are doing red-hot deals on digital phones. Time's ticking away, so don't delay. See Harvey Norman today. Red-hot analogue to digital deals available at these locations.
These are our heroes. This is the song we sing. This is devotion, and this is loyalty. These are our heroes. We can all dream to be. It's simple. Football every night. Nothing beats it, that's what I say. I want my football every day. I want my football. I want my football. I
Superstars of Wrestling tonight, 8:30 on Sports Australia Channel 12.
The Bulldogs have been big news through the first 4 weeks of the season, and they are very big news tonight with Chris Grant suspended for 2 weeks. So at this moment he is once again ineligible for the 1998 Brownlow medal, suspended for striking Lee Colbert. But the Bulldogs have announced that they will appeal the decision, and so for the first time since the new appeal system was introduced, we will actually have one heard. The Bulldogs are saying it is worth the expense. Let's have a look at some of the talking points of the round, some that you've already talked about, some that we've discovered on close scrutiny of our videotapes. Remember last year when David Burke and Michael O'Loughlin were ruled out of the game because they went off the ground other than through the interchange gate, and players became increasingly aware of the interchange gate. Well, in fact, they were very... Here's O'Loughlin, who was out of the game by that stage, and Rodney Eade wasn't terribly pleased about it.
Oh, no.
And down at Cardinia Park...
I was just wondering, Tim, why didn't he go and get showered then?
Look at this, before the bounce. Now, they don't need to go through the interchange gate, do they, before the game has actually started?
No, I've had a bit of experience doing them the past couple of weeks, and you don't. You can head straight to the comfort of the dugout.
So it looks as though some players are being very careful.
Just very careful.
Very diligent, in fact. And I guess they're a bit gun-shy after the events of last year.
Yep. Fair call.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep. The Bulldogs...
Nice repartee, boys. It's good.
Tell me about the Bulldogs and their warm-up. They've been doing it on the ground if they can get there early enough, and I gather they went to St Mary's.
Yeah, they went out in the little number 2 oval next to Cardinia on Saturday to do it, but they've done it basically every week, and it seems like it's likely to become a bit of a fad, I think, because all the comments I've heard about it have been entirely favourable. And you think about other sports, I mean, basically you should sort of warm up, train as you play, shouldn't you?
So what are you saying? Did they do it outside, or was that was inside there, didn't they, wasn't it?
Yeah, that didn't look like a footy field, did it?
So did they go outside?
They did. They went outside and warmed up.
Came back. Yeah, well, it seems to be catching on. I mean, Terry Wallace's argument is that all other sports, tennis, they warm up on the tennis court, not hitting against a wall inside, and it's logical. If you're going to kick a footy around.
He also reckons too, Gary, that the fact that last year they started from behind a lot of the time. Took to a quarter time to warm up and motor into it. So try and replicate almost closer to the ground situation of a warm-up rather than try and get fully warmed up inside.
Well, you certainly don't see, I mean, the traditional warm-up, you have a lot of blokes pumping their legs up and down very quickly. You don't see a lot of that out in the footy field, really, do you?
It's a little bit outdated now.
Sound of the stops on the hard dressing room floor.
Yeah, that's a little bit outdated. Yeah.
Count the slow count.
And the
quicker.
Oh yeah. The old Geelong rooms. Remember? I think you'd be old enough to remember before they renovated them. There's just that thin bit of board between you and the Geelong boys, and you used to do tuck jumps, and you'd actually feel that if we yell out 10, count to 10 really loud, it'll scare them. So you'd yell them out, right, roll over, do 10 quick push-ups, we'll yell these louder.
They were just trying to count to 10.
Yeah.
What about in the game of inches at the end? I mean, is it possible that you leave a little bit on the track pre-match and
no, I wouldn't think so.
I mean, a marathon runner he'd have a warm-up, but he certainly wouldn't train too hard.
I wouldn't think you'd spend too many pennies. I think it's a very general, basic warm-up. A bit of a kick, a bit of marking, maybe a few shots of goal. I think the ruckmen do a few tap-outs, so I think it's pretty low.
Dermy swing the elbows a couple of times.
I tend to think, though, that when you're in the rooms and they say, all right, let's warm up, everyone starts with a jog, and you jog around the room. And in there, you might jog for 2 minutes. When you're jogging backwards and forwards 20 metres, you might end up doing 150 metres warm-up in your jog, which is 1/10 of what you might do out on the ground at training night. Replicate the way you train. Everybody does 800 metres warm-up, 2 laps, or 880, 2 laps of the oval. So it's good to get out there and just replicate the way you warm up every day of your training life.
One thing that hasn't changed is the demand for good old-fashioned G&D, as demonstrated by Geelong's Paul Lynch. Take a gutsy mark there in front of Dent.
He's a good matchup, this kid. He's a hard grab for anybody, because essentially at 6 foot high, and 183 centimetres, he's a crumbing player in the forward line, but can take a grab. Very strong overhead, and therefore it's the old conundrum. Do we put a running player on him? Do we put a marking player on him? Because the old way, he outmarks the running backman and he outruns the marking backman. So he's a good matchup.
Do you think he's a lot more important to him, I reckon, than people realise, because he's got that flash of brilliance, and Geelong is a side that, for all it's, it's been solid, but it's probably lacked a bit of brilliance in the last couple of years, and he certainly has.
I think you've hit the nail right on the head. You've got the likes of Hall, he's your 3-goal half-forward, pinch hitter, full forward. Barry Stoner maybe 2 if he goes up there. David Mensch maybe 2 if he goes up there. Paul Lynch is the quality forward, and I tend to think the other blokes, you treat them as the headbangers. They'll go and do the grunt work, and this bloke is the matchup that's going to kick you 4 or 5, maybe even 6 every 2nd or 3rd week.
Gary, I'm not having a go at you because of the shape of your teeth, but do you wear a mouthguard when you play?
Well, for all the young kids, Tim, out there, you should absolutely wear mouthguards when you play.
Sounds like you've done one of those community service ads.
I have in the past, Tim, to be honest. I haven't worn it like this, though, I've got to say. Scotty Wine, half in, half out. And look, I've got a real little one now, only covers the front couple of teeth, but I used to really struggle with it, doing a lot of talking on the ground. I always had it in and out, and I think what you saw there was probably Scotty had it out, and sometimes, you're concentrating and you didn't get it back in. I just found it a hindrance. I really did. Now I've got one that you can't even see, to be honest. Just a real little one, dude.
So much you can't even see it. You just cannot see it, kids, but it is there.
It covers the 2 real teeth, doesn't it? What about the rest?
Yeah, but you should wear one, but I mean...
He might have just been caught halfway through the, taking it out, putting it back in.
Maybe I tend to think that's what happened there. I reckon,
Maybe it's flavoured.
I trust you to think of your stomach.
I reckon that's what's happened. I reckon you're right on the money there. I reckon some of them work on suction, and they're quite hard to get them off. Bang, they come down, you can hear the suction break. I reckon he's probably just had it there and thought, well, throwing it in a bit quicker than that. I never knew I even had one. Once I put it in at the start of the day, it was like padding up in cricket. Put your pads on, you'll face anybody as long as they hit you there, but I never even knew I had it on.
Have a look at this. Glenn Kilpatrick, who just seemed to think he'd taken a mark. He goes back to take his kick. He'd received a hand pass, or was he just being very casual?
Just casual, summing up the options, I think. Looked like that, though, didn't it?
No, that's not a bad handball.
That was the same player.
That's how well Scotty West is going. He demands the footy from both his team and the opposition, and that's why we might win the Brownlow, Rohan.
The words Phil Manasseh were used down there on Saturday when that happened.
I've got to say, that bit of footage there, just as you catch West coming into the footage there on the left, his hand goes up like that. I reckon he's called for it. You can see his hand go up like that. Watch. Oh, sorry. Oh, no, I thought it was the right one.
I think it's just a shocking handball, isn't
it? Yeah, no, I thought he had.
He's giving it back to him.
Hang on.
and we should point out, too, for people that didn't see the whole passage, that actually ended up with Paul Hudson soccering the winning goal off the ground, so it was fairly significant.
I reckon he's called for that, though.
One of those blues you make.
There would have been blood in the coach's box, and there was a bit of blood on various grounds. Barry Stoneham had a bit on his face. The umpire wanted to send him off. Liam Pickering thought, I'll just wipe it off, and then he'll be able to play on.
Well, he's confident he knows where Barry's been, so no problems there.
Well, was there any danger the umpire would come in to say to Pickering, you're off too, you've got blood on your hand?
Who knows with this blood rule? I saw Benny Gale on, I think it was Friday night against Collingwood. He had a little bit of a scratch on the knee. I think he went the old mud pack on the knee and tried to cover it up, but Bucks was onto it and pointed it out, and off he went. So
it was a nasty laceration. That was
all of half a centimetre.
Now this was a contentious one because this was Barry Hall, who the umpire judged after a 50-metre penalty. He was in about 20 of goal, and out of the contact he had blood coming from his head, and the umpire decided he couldn't have the shot at goal, that somebody else would have to have it, And of course he missed.
Well, I think in this instance, the player going off, which is Barry Hall, he should have the call on who takes the shot for goal. That is the best and most equitable, fair way to deal with that.
Couldn't they have a bit of flexibility there? If a guy's taking a mark and he's having a set shot for goal, he's not going to come into contact with anyone else. The blood's not going to get on anyone else. Why can't they just show a bit of flexibility there for the 10 seconds it takes him to have the shot?
Because the flexibility. What if he ran in and the ball got kicked into the man on the mark?
Very good point, Dermot.
And it's
you
play
are
on
thinking
football.
beautifully tonight. And the other thing is, it's in the best interest of the club to get him off.
Just a couple of wins and look what happens.
The shots on in
Perky,
because they get
Gary
the take off, cover the blood, bloke has a shot, get him back on. But he should have said, listen, right, you're off. We stopped looking at me like that. He said, Jason Heatley's going to take this shot for goal. Simple as that.
Zoning in on the target here like old days.
I reckon. Can we hear that story again, please, about how you hit him back there?
He kicked me.
Oh, okay.
Slipper.
Another incident from Waverley, Peter Everett and Nick Holland. Everett takes the mark, raises the arm, and the decision is reversed.
Yeah, bit of acting there, but he did clip him on the chin and it was
I reckon that's fair enough.
Oh, well, if it was reversed, why not a report? How did he deck him?
Yeah,
well, he's holding on to him, look. He's holding on to him.
He's questioning the umpire.
He's holding on to him. Surely he's entitled to push off.
You can't push it. You can't hit a guy in the face.
Oh, was he hit in the face, was it?
Well, he made contact.
With the what?
Please.
Well, he did cut the
hand.
Cut the...
the forearm or the elbow.
The forearm. He did cut the inside of Nick's mouth, was that?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, so... But
was it reportable?
It's just fraction, I'd say about 2 inches above the elbow.
Oh.
But that,
he's taking a dive, there's no worry about that, to make sure the umpie's seen it.
Surely that's one of those incidents where the reversal of the free kick is enough. You don't have to go any further.
No, absolutely, I think so, yeah.
This game is being put under such incredible scrutiny, and and Ken Judge was under scrutiny constantly from a Channel 7 camera, and apparently became very frustrated with it, Rohan.
Yeah, well, actually, we had a bit of a lunch with the Hawthorn guys today. Derm was curiously absent from it, but...
some of us were.
Oh, thanks for that. Yeah. But, no, look, the Hawthorn are actually going to make an official complaint to the league about this because I think Ken Judge's point was, well, you know, it's one thing to have the odd shot of the coach tearing his hair out or whatever, but they claim that there was a camera actually trained on the box for a good 20 minutes. And there was one passage of play in particular in the last quarter where they kept on the screen the inset shot of Judge in the box having about 4 separate tantrums, basically. And, you know, I think there's something to that. I mean, you know, it was a bit ghoulish, I thought.
Have you sat in the box, Doom?
Yeah, I did last week, actually. Was fortunate enough to sit in the box for 1 quarter.
Very disconcerting, though. I mean, they do come up and stick it, like, it's not a long shot. That's a bloke with a handheld camera coming up to the corner of the box and sitting right there. If I was a coach, I wouldn't be too impressed with that either.
Well, Judge did say eventually on, when was the game? Saturday night, he asked John Hook to do something about the cameraman, and I don't think John Hook would have needed a lot of asking to tell a guy where to go, would he?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it does make for great theatre. They're terrific cutaway shots, which I think people watching the television coverage...
There is a respect element to it, though. I mean, and I think what they're saying is they understand, the public, the viewer, you know, they appreciate some inside footage like that, seeing the coach in his prime position of authority get upset, seeing him make decisions. But when it's just total scrutinised, it's
and the lenses,
invasive.
And can't they get a longer shot?
Well, yeah, such good long lenses now that they could shoot it from further
They probably would cop it, Tim, I think, if you did have a long shot, somewhere mounted up for the full 2 hours, trained on the box. I reckon they'd cop that. As long as it was a pinpoint way in the distance, you could focus it in and you get the same shot. But as Gary says, there's a bloke standing outside the box. If I'm standing here with a camera like this on you and you're looking that way at that camera, you ain't going to be able to do your job properly. You're going to feel the pressure and the heat of the scrutinisation.
You don't mind being stared at as long as you don't know about it. But when you know there's someone just staring at you, it's a
well,
bit
you follow the play and you end up looking straight down the barrel. You have to turn around to get a look past it. But
Rohan, just a little bit more further to Hawthorn and their second round clash with Collingwood.
Yeah, that's right. They round 16 it is. It was initially a day game. It's been changed to a night game, Saturday night game at Waverley. Hawthorn's very unhappy about that, and they're going to petition the league to make it a day game again. The reason being that, and this is Ian Dicker's view, that the crowds just don't go out to Waverley night games beyond about April or May. It's too cold, basically. So they're going to lobby pretty hard to return that to a day game. And just while we're on crowds and fixturing or whatever, some interesting figures come out today. AFL attendances to the end of round 4. Gate receipts are actually down 23% for the year, so it's pretty significant. I think that probably indicates that more people are buying club memberships. But probably the more worrying one, I think, is that there's been a 5% decrease nationally in attendances, but a 10% decrease in Victoria alone. So crowds are down here twice as much as other cities in Australia.
When you go and televise games an hour after they started, I think that's
probably a fairly logical factor, yeah.
One to talk about perhaps in the next couple of weeks. We've told you a number of times Chris Grant has been suspended tonight for 2 weeks and the Bulldogs are going to appeal. A roll call for tomorrow night. The videotape has produced a few victims, or potential victims. Jason Ball, a striking charge. Damien Hardwick likewise. Martin Pike also. From the incident we showed you earlier, Brad Pearce and Marcus Seacamp have both been reported. And a big one for Carlton, Stephen Silvani up for allegedly striking David Schwartz. But it wasn't all bad news for Sauce at Optus Oval yesterday. He took a tremendous mark which produced a goal in the last quarter. My radio colleague Peter Booth said they looked like a couple of love-making tarantulas. And let's have a look at them in action.
Michael Sexton on the bench now. It's all Carlton. Matty Allen on the right foot. One-on-one Silvani and Street Silvani. Oh, what a great mark against Shanahan.
On Sports AFL, you can see your team's games replayed at a time to suit you. Every week, every game replayed at the same time. The Demon Show, 4:15 Tuesday on Sports AFL. May means sporting mayhem on the Channel of Champions, Sports Australia. Soccer and the English Premier League is coming to an end with Man U and the Gunners fighting for the crown. Basketball. It's the Women's World Championships and our girls are a shot at the title. Cheer on our Opals with exclusive breakfast coverage. NRL. Exclusively live games brought to you by Sports Australia's expert commentary team.
Oh, beautiful stuff!
Plus every game replayed at a time to suit you. Netball. The Commonwealth Bank Trophy continues. Australia's best battle it out for club glory. Swimming. Join us when the Commonwealth Games team is announced. Rugby. Campese, Rugby's My Life. An exclusive look at one of Australia's greatest ever players. All this and more mayhem on Sports Australia. You thought Sports Australia 2 was kicking in April? Well, get a load of May. AFL, pay TV exclusive live games, Sydney, Brisbane only. Soccer, pay TV exclusive live coverage of the Ericsson Cup Final Series. Basketball, the Women's World Championships in a pay TV exclusive. Rugby, pay TV exclusive live coverage of the 98 Rugby Premiership. If it moves in May, you'll see it on Channel 14, Sports Australia 2. The ATP Tennis Tour slides onto European clay for the Monte Carlo Open. Catch the action from 2 p.m. Friday, replayed 9 p.m. Friday on ESPN Channel 11.
We'll be highlighting Gary Lyon's contribution to a great Melbourne victory in this last segment of tonight's football feedback, Gary. But just one or two shots at goal in such a tight game that were so close. And this one from Justin Murphy was ruled a behind. He obviously thought it was a goal. He was smiling.
Yeah, that was home.
Well, he apparently said to a reporter after the game that he thought it got in by about a foot. And looking at the replay, if we slow it down, I mean, the only possibility it was a point, I guess, is that the ball's gone over the post and then curled back. But
knowing where it lands, yeah, I'll tell you, it's it looks through like the goals. It's reaching the goals about now.
Well, that's a goal.
It's deceptive.
See,
Tough call, isn't it?
It only goes about 7 metres through, so she's a fair way down once it's gone through.
Who would want to be a goal umpire? I know it's one of the glamour jobs of the game, Rohan, but would you want to be one?
Well, when they qualify from the Connolly Goal Umpiring Academy, Tim, we'll have a much better prepared mob of goal umpires.
Kutafidis, aerial skills and at ground level, he has a beautiful kick, and still he doesn't spend a lot of time in front of goal. I wonder, with Silvani up forward in the last quarter, Melbourne kicking goals to win it, might Kuta have been worth plonking in the sticks?
Well, David Parkin certainly didn't feel so, did he, Tim, after the game on Saturday? But then he wasn't too receptive about anything much, really.
But I tend to think Kuta finishes a game the way he starts it, and I just don't think he's got the football smarts to play a key position from the word go in the forward line. He might start off having a bad day, and that's the way he's going to finish. When we put him in the middle of the ground where he can run freely to the ball and find it, let the ball find him as well, I think then you can move him down forward. So
we can't call him Captain Courageous anymore, but how about this tackle to produce the goal that tied it up for the Demons?
Great tackle, Gaz.
Just guessed the right way and fell on him out of sheer exhaustion. That's basically what it was.
You were fantastic, Gary.
No, that was...
Did he have a bit of a word in his ear, did he? Tell him he was a bit slow?
I did think that he underestimated my speed at that stage of the match. No, you wouldn't have said anything like that.
Now, you did have a word or two to say to the umpires, but just before we have a look at what happened yesterday...
I can sense a setup.
Just a little flashback to round 1 of the season and the football feedback program that followed on March 30.
Bring it on.
Oh.
You just got to treat the umpires, and with all due respect, you got to treat them like idiots because...
That's a lot of respect.
With all due respect, not saying they are, Steve.
No.
You got to give them an out so they can say, oh, look, I won't pay that because it looked like he was going to kick it because, well, not the umpires, the fans like idiots and let the umpires off the hook. Did you understand what I was saying there, Tim?
Well, not completely, no. You've got to treat me like an idiot too.
Yes, I was just suggesting you need to give them an out so that they can then have a reason when Peter Schwab calls them in, they can say, well, look, he tried to kick it.
Nonetheless, think of them as idiots, Gary.
Well done.
What were you thinking on the weekend?
Were you fined for that or were you fined for this? Now, have a look at this.
Oh, I'm not sure. Young Stephen, who's a very good mate of mine, almost decapitated me. So I was just suggesting that perhaps he may have missed that particular
You're getting angrier?
Am I?
Yeah.
No, I'm mellowing. Years gone by would have gone on with it and given a free kick away and Neil Bannerhill dragged him off the ground.
Run off and kick
somebody. You didn't see the lead up to that, though, did you? Were you at the game?
No, yeah, I was, but you might have just run off and ankle tapped somebody just to get it out of your system.
King hit me from behind.
In all seriousness, without getting into trouble, did you notice much of a difference in the umpiring on Sunday compared to the previous few weeks?
No, I thought the umpires were fine on the weekend. At our game, I didn't see any other footy. I was actually tell a lie. I saw Friday night's game.
Apart from a couple of goals that weren't goals, and
yeah, no, umpiring was fine.
Just a final look at the Chris Grant incident. If you've joined us late, he has been found guilty and suspended for 2 weeks. But the Bulldogs have announced that they are going to appeal the decision, the first appeal under the new appeal system, a contentious one. A lot coming up apart from that Western Bulldogs appeal this week. Footy Focus Thursday night at 7:30 with Peter Donegan, Barras, Harves, Billy. The weekend wrap Sunday night at 7:30, Craig Kelly, Robert Walls and Paul Salmon. So a lot to look forward to. Just a sad note on which to end the program this week. A pioneer of football on television, Alf Potter, the famous Channel 7 director, died at the weekend. We send our condolences to his family. For decades since Alf got it all started back in the 50s, we've been celebrating what television can do with Aussie rules, and we celebrate Alf's life with this program tonight. Thanks for joining us. Till next week, good night.
This has been a Sports AFL production.
Can you imagine this lineup of unsurpassed footballing brains dressed in women's underwear? Ron Carter Barassi, Peter Teddy Donegan, Mark the Hussy Harvey, Billy Bondage Brownless, and AFL Football Operations Manager Ian Collins. neither can we. That's why on Footy Focus, the focus is on footy. Footy Focus, 7:30 Thursday night on Sports AFL.
Who's helping Collingwood with their long distance? Primus. Join us for this week's game.
Well, Robbo, great atmosphere. Are you pumped?
I think this will be a good game. I think that Collingwood are fielding what looks to be an inferior team, but they lift against the opposition.
Well, they've named this bloke Sav Rocker on the bench. Would you play him? Would you start him at full forward, or maybe even in the right?
He will play, but I've got a differing opinion to you. I think he's got to kick 6 or 7 goals if Collingwood are to win this match.
Well, Nathan Buckley named there at centre-half forward. He was well held last week by Crediuk. He may get Kellaway, Gasper, or even Prescott tonight. We don't have long to wait to see what happens. In fact, whether he lines up there. Inexperienced backline too. Crow, Michael and Godden down back. They'll be tested tonight.
And this boy caused a lot of controversy last week with when he went down with the cramp, and Paul Broderick kicked the goal. But I feel as though Richmond have got 8, maybe 9, even possibly 10 goal kickers, as distinct from the suspect Collingwood forward line.
Yeah, Daffy's been very good too. Also, Ben Harrison up forward. He was excellent last week against Hawthorn. Got Richmond right back into the game in that last quarter.
Now, you get yourself ready.
Okay, Robbo.
Because after this break, there'll be plenty of action here at the MCG.
Why lose with Telstra's 3 rates per minute to the UK and USA? Day, night, and weekend. When you could win with Primus Globe Talk's 1 low rate. We're always just 37 cents per minute, and we have no joining fees, no contracts, and no minimum calls. Primus. Join us. Call 1300 36 14 66.
It's simple and it's right. I want my football every night. Nothing beats it, that's what I say. I want my football every day. I want my football. I want my football. I want my football.
There are 3 sure things in life: death, taxes and the end of the analogue mobile phone network. If your mobile telephone number starts with 014, 015, 017, 018 or 019, then the end is near. The analogue mobile phone network closes on January 1 in the year 2000 in all but some rural areas. But for a limited time, Harvey Norman are doing red-hot deals on digital phones. Time's ticking away, so don't delay. See Harvey Norman today. Red-hot, analogue to digital deals available at these locations.